Hello and welcome back, everybody. It's the New View Safety Coach and the Shut Up David series. We've got a superstar guest for you today. Another one. I know, spoiling you again. Kym Bancroft is one of the most accomplished and forward-thinking HSE leaders in the world. With over 20 years of strategic leadership experience across industries like defense, mining, construction, and a lot more, Kym has an unparalleled track record of achieving safe, productive, and sustainable outcomes. As a former Queensland Regulator for Work Health and Safety and current Managing Director at New View Safety, she has mastered the art of navigating complex regulations while driving cultural transformations. Kym's unique expertise blends cutting-edge safety practices with a focus on employee well-being, diversity, and collaboration. Her innovative strategies don't just check boxes, they usher organizations into a brave new future of learning and growth. Please welcome the amazing Kym Bancroft. Hello, Kym.
Hello, David. That's quite the intro, I have to say. I think I need some help from you writing my bio or something.
That was actually taken from your bio, so you've done most of the hard work.
I know, but you embellished it so nicely. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for the kind words.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll send you my bank details later on. You can transfer over. How are you going? Kym? It's been a while since we caught up.
Yeah, I think we caught up in Perth at your Safety Differently book club from memory, which I can't remember what month that was, David. You probably can, but that was fabulous. You had the Brents there. That was really good.
Brent Sutton and Brent Robinson as well there from New Zealand. I'm talking to them. They're currently in Banff at Canada at the conference there, or they were. They're probably on their way back now. We're going to try and get them back on at some point, and we're going to do a bit of a download as to what that conference was like as well. But yeah, that was good. And then I think we caught up after that a couple of months later in Perth as well at the coffee shop there when you were over here just before Christmas, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like to spend every Christmas in Perth, where I'm from the West, obviously where you live. So yeah, it's always great to go and catch up with yourself and Zoe Nation. I'm catching up with Tom Byrne, actually. Tom Byrne.
Oh.
Is that how you pronounce his surname? Yeah, I'm going to catch up with him for coffee. It's great. It's
That'd
wonderful
awesome.
just always catching up with the network, right?
It is. So we've got a bit of a global audience here at New View Safety Coach, and I know you're very well known here in Australia. But for those people who may not have heard of you before, why don't we start with a bit of an introduction to you, your experience within the safety industry, and how you got to where you are today. I know it's a bit of a broad question, but whatever comes to mind would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. Yeah, so I started out as a young graduate with an undergraduate of psychology, and I went out into working into non-for-profit. And I really enjoyed that. I actually worked my way up quite quickly into a senior leadership role in my early 20s. And I was just itching to go overseas and, do the working in London and travel the world, go to South Africa and all the fun places. My husband and I are both really into surfing. So, off we went on a surf trip around the world. And when I was away, I thought, I really just want to push and complete this qualification I've got in psych. And so when I came back to Perth, went and did my master's in organizational psychology. So became, obviously completed that qualification, which I've never ever regretted doing that. I think it's such a great qualification to have as a safety professional. And at that time, I was really keen to move out of not-for-profit, so I wasn't pigeonholed in that industry. Not that it's not a great industry, of course, to work in. And I applied for this job with an organization called Centus. So Centus is a Latin word, and it comes from two words being securus mentis, which means safe mind. And it was this boutique consultancy specializing in safety culture transformation, but they wanted psychologists. So I applied for it and I got this role, and I moved over to the East for the role. And set off on the Gold Coast, one, because the surf was good there, and two, for this great job. And then I worked for Centus for many, many years, traveling the world, working with large global organizations, going in, transforming their safety culture. And it just gave me so many great experiences and insight into these large organizations like BHP, Rio Tinto, Arca. So basically, David, you're traveling to all the places in the world where you'd never go on holiday.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting to do some amazing work as well at the same time.
Yeah, exactly right. So going to the diamond mine in Yellowknife, you wouldn't go there on holiday, right? But you'd go there for work. Like Newman and Weipa in Australia. Again, these places are amazing places. Like Weipa, it's just incredible. So it's teeming with life, natural life, Weipa. But you go up there and you do these work in these mining sites, right? So yeah, traveled all around the world doing this incredible work. Had 2 kids in in that time, and it was part-time, then full-time, then part-time, but also did a lot of product development with them as well. And that's where I met Tristan Casey too. So he was our psychologist doing all the safety climate and safety culture metric work. So I think that just really put me in good stead about in terms of what worked in safety and what didn't work as well when you're trying to do broad safety culture transformation. Yep. So after quite some time working with centres, I went into what I thought, so I'm going to say this a lot, this was like my dream role at the time, right? It was the safety culture transformation partner with Queensland Urban Utilities, which is Australia's largest water utility. I mean, what a job title, right, David? Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Those job titles never come up. I applied for it. I didn't think I was going to get it, but I got the role. And it was such a wonderful role. I'd actually sat outside the safety team. And it was kind of a strategic role at the time to come in and take the appetite that the board and the CEO had, which was to transform safety. Just run with it basically. And so I did that for, I can't remember how long it was, David, whether it was a year or 2, but the head of health and safety role came up at Urban Utilities. And I just thought, you know what, I was that usual thing of, I don't feel qualified for this, but I'm going to go for it. And so I went for the role, I got the role, and then just found myself in this really wonderful, unique position of having top-down support from the CEO and the board and the executive, especially the executive of operations, and then being able to just come in and write a really ambitious and contemporary strategy for safety. Now, when I did that, I didn't want to take, obviously, the intellectual property from centres because I've been working with that for so many years. I wanted to go, what else is new out there? What is the evidence? What's the safety science saying around how we should approach safety? So I got in contact with Tristan, and because obviously he knows so much of the research and safety science. I said, Tristan, what's trending right now? What should I do here? I don't want to use the behaviour-based safety approach that I've been using for such a long time at centres. And he said, Kym, go and read Eric Hognagel's book, Safety 1, Safety 2, I think that's what it's called, right? Yeah. And go and read The Field Guide to Human Error by Sidney Dekker. Like so many of us, when we read that book, right, David, it's just like, bang, light bulbs go off. It's like, where have I been all this time? And so then I was able to build a whole strategy of safety culture transformation for urban utilities. But given I was in the head of safety role, leave no stone unturned in how we did safety, from our critical control, critical risk management, auditing, injury management, health and wellbeing, psychosocial. So I looked through it. I looked through every single one of those things through the lens of HOP, safety differently.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It was really a wonderful time.
Wow. It's a dream job, dream outcomes as well. So if anyone's interested in that as well, I mean, this isn't Kym Bancroft's first time on YouTube, by the way. She's got her own channel, and she also has some videos on there, such as Safety Differently in Practice, Doing Safety Differently, and Safety 2 in Practice at Urban Utilities, which is what you were referring to there, where they document the process. Well, not the whole process, but they document some of the initiatives that you were doing, some of the outcomes that you had, the interactions that you went through, the strategic planning that you went through as well. With some great interviews with you on there, talking about what your approach was when you were putting together this plan, and what that might do, and some of the help. There's some appearances from Mr. Dekker himself in there as well, from memory, and Stephen Harvey as well, isn't there?
Yeah, correct. So that documentary sort of came at the end, or sort of toward the end of the whole. So it was a 3-year strategy. So I think, if you're doing cultural transformation, don't be overly ambitious, but really you should be able to do it in a sort of a 3 to 5 year period, right? Like if it's going to take you 10 years, there's maybe something amiss here. So this was a 3-year strategy cycle, which was successful for the context I was in. So Sydney came to me and said, Kym, I've already done 2 documentaries on operationalizing safety differently. Yours is a great example. We had used Sydney to help us out with the whole transformation. So he said, Kym, let's do this documentary. And Kym, I want you to be the star of it. I'm like, Sydney, no, I don't want to be the star of this, because this is is a team effort. So there are leaders, like Dave Biddle, Richard Pedersen, so many wonderful operational leaders at Urban Utilities, plus the safety team. Like, it certainly wasn't me alone. So I really hope, so I was really trying to dampen that in the documentary. But the whole point of the documentary was to show people how to do it. So that was really the intent of that. So so there's that video, and there's also a lot of little animations that we produced for Urban Utilities internally to introduce learning teams, work insights, safety differently, which we just put up free to air so people can see how we did it. But David, I was over the years of working with Urban Utilities, I was inundated with people around the world saying, Kym, love what you've done. How do I do it? And I'd often say, well, look, you've really got to take the research and synthesize it for your own context. So after doing that 3-year cycle with Urban Utilities, David, as you said, it was very successful in terms of the outcomes. I thought, look, I just want to continue to diversify my experience, work in diverse risk profiles. So I went to work for Serco Asia Pacific, which was a completely different risk profile.
Wow.
Decentralized structure, which makes it a little bit more different and interesting. But I had a really great leader that I reported to, Julie Carroll. She was amazing. She just fully supported everything we were trying to achieve from a health and safety perspective. So we built on the great work that Wade Needham had done at Serco. He was the previous head of health, safety, wellbeing. So we built on that with, again, some really great strategies around psychosocial, introducing things like work insights and just reinvigorating it from a strategic perspective. Did a lot of work with the executive team on due diligence from a health and safety perspective and whatnot. And so, doing that for a while, then I got the tap on the shoulder for my next dream job, David, which was the Queensland Regulator. So regulator for electrical safety, workers' compensation, workplace health and safety, industrial relations. So I couldn't say no to that, right? Like total, perceived dream job, sort of at that pinnacle for Queensland. So I took that, got the role, worked hard to get it actually, took the role and did a season as the Queensland Regulator. So that was really interesting from the perspective to see how policy is set at that top end of Safe Work Australia, the ministers' meetings, which are all documented and available online, to see the decisions that are made around things like industrial manslaughter, silica dust, psychosocial. So it was good to sit at that end and see that. What was also really surprising about that role, David, was just the amount of devastating injury and fatality that would come across my desk every day. So obviously our inspectors are out there, investigating these things. And I was the person who would sign off on the letter to the families who had just lost a loved one in a workplace fatality, offering them support. So our agency offered support. It was just shocking, David, what I saw each and every day.
I bet it was. Wow. So, okay. Then, as you mentioned, did a season in that position, and then what? And I mean, we may as well keep on going while we're on the roll, right? So So now, in between that, I went and did my Masters of Safety Leadership with Sydney and Drew at Griffith University, which, not taking any endorsement for this, but I fully promote that particular qualification. I think they're still doing the Masters or the grad certificate, but that's a great qualification for anyone interested in new view type of contemporary information. So I did that in between all that time. Then decided to branch out with Tristan to do new view safety. So go back into the consulting world. So Tristan, we're very much Pracademics, if you like. So Tristan bringing that academic lens, which he's so strong in. Obviously, he's been a guest on your show. And then myself with the practitioner perspective. So really taking that blend of what the literature is saying, operationalizing it. So we're working with a lot of clients at the board, senior level, around due diligence, metrics, doing a lot of work to help organizations build ambitious and great strategies, and also helping organizations to bridge that gap. Some organizations say, Kym, like we've been doing behavior-based safety for years, we know it's not working. Can you help us take an integrated approach? They don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but they do want to evolve and mature. So we're very much helping them take that integrated approach, doing bespoke safety leadership programs, decluttering initiatives, HOP implementation. So that broad gamut of things that we can offer organizations. And I got to say, David, there's so many great organizations out there doing incredible stuff. And I'm so privileged to call them my clients, our clients, because some of the stuff that comes across my desk, I'm like, wow, this is impressive. This is really shaping the industry, right? So that's there
where
is.
I am.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of organizations out there. I mean, we talk about it all the time in the safety, well, in lots of industries. When you're talking about large scale change, organizational culture, you talk about that senior leadership buy-in level. That's what you really need to have in order to be able, I mean, you can do it other ways. There are examples of, doing ninja style. That's the thing. I think Josh Bryant talked about it originally, but having that top level, senior level engagement in the initiative at hand, that's critical, isn't it, for you, Kym?
Yeah, so I've really had to debate this, David, and I don't know if this is the time for the debate, but I mean, I do come across clients who are doing the ninja backdoor because they might be in a decentralized structure. They might be in a really large organization. Right. It's hard for them to, I guess, campaign for that top end support, but certainly, and I guess it just really depends on context, right? But there's other organizations I work for where the person is in the position where they've got that seat at the board table or the executive table where they can come in, present compelling arguments for change. They can drive it strategically. And because I've done that myself, I probably lean toward that because I've seen what is possible when you achieve that. So yes, I do advocate for doing that strategically if you can, but that's not possible for everybody, right?
Right. Okay. Well, I'm glad we got that cleared up, and it does make sense when you talk about context, because my mind automatically went to the hierarchical organization whereby it's always top-down leadership. When that's not necessarily true these days. There are decentralized organizations which operate independently of that, of any kind of senior level operation. And I suppose in case like that ninja style, that would be good. To go back as well, what you're saying about the safety leadership degree from Griffith University in Sydney DECA. I did the grad cert in that, and Tristan Casey was actually my lecturer at the time, and that was the first time I ever heard the term Pracademic. And I brought this up with him in his talk as well, and he said, well, yeah, it's kind of like how we work with Kym, how he works with you. He obviously brings that really strong academic research-based focus, and you've got that really strong implementation, practical side of things, and on how that gets translated into the real world, and how you then communicate that at all levels of the organization, from the senior leadership all the way through to the frontline workers. Where's your favorite place to work within the organization? At what level is your favorite place?
That's a really great question, David, because for me, it's a no-brainer. It really is every level. I love working with the board, the executive, because they've got their own tensions and their own challenges. And it's easy sometimes to look at it and go, what are they actually doing there? And, why don't they do this, why don't they do that? But, they really do have their own set of challenges, unique challenges, right? Especially boards as well. They're dealing with a lot that they need to be mindful of or manage from a legislative perspective as well. So I really love working with that particular cohort. Then, you go through the organization down to the front line. I still, every single time I work with a supervisor's, leadership group, or even go out and spend some time with the front line, every time I walk away just going, that was so great. That was such a good day. I learned so much from them. I love hearing about their challenges. So I really have to say every single level of the organization. I just spent a couple of weeks in Trinidad working with their leadership group, and it was just, I learned so much from them as hopefully they learned from me, right? So for me, it's every single level, because every level has their own unique challenges, their own unique opportunities to do safety in a particular way. And they've all got different goals and aims. Like the frontline, they really want their voice to be heard. They want to be empowered. The board and the executives, they're thinking about different things again. So for me, it's just all of it. All of it, David. I'll take it all.
Okay. So we enjoy the whole gamut of that. And that's great, because that's actually, I think that's a skill set and a desire that's needed within safety if you're going to properly communicate safety throughout those entire, all those different levels. You need to have that ability to be able to communicate across those different job roles, expectations, and skill sets as well. So a lot of your clients, and a lot of your future clients as well, they don't just come from Australia. Obviously, you mentioned Trinidad there. You got work in different clients. You've been to America. You've been to parts of Europe. You've been all over the place. Are there any shared challenges that you can see from a high level meta challenge, as it were, that these organizations share? Is that something that's common, or is each very distinct in their own problem set and their own challenge set?
Again, David, it's a great question, because I'm not surprised, but I'm always, I guess, a little bit pleasantly surprised. Not pleasantly surprised, it's not the right word, but I am always, noting that the challenges are consistent all around the world, even though these industries are vastly different. So, we're working with agriculture, and then we're working with methanol, working with manufacturing, and just the challenges in safety and how consistent they are. But then at the same time, on the other hand, and this is where it's never black and white, right? You then have challenges that are a little bit more unique to that organization based on their history and where they've been. So, for example, a common challenge that I would find across a lot of the clients would be metrics. So,
Yes.
we're measuring safety using total recordable injury frequency rate, TRIFR, LTIFR, or TRL, whatever you call it in your country and jurisdiction. And just that frustration of it's not really indicative or telling our board about the true state of safety. It's not giving us the assurances that it should give us around safety. So that's a common challenge. Another common challenge, which Greg Smith and I spoke about at the recent conference in Wollongong, which is that corruptibility of metrics. So whether it's an old view metric of, say, safety observations, very traditional, or it's a new view safety metric of learning teams, just how that metric can be corrupted. I think just because of the ecosystem that we work in, because we want to share quantitative statistics upward. People like to see the metric improving. That's how we've been socialized to interpret metrics. So again, that's a common challenge across many clients. And then you have the history of the organization, which will throw up the specific nuanced challenges for that company.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So there are shared challenges throughout different organizations across the world. However, the context, again, that really determines what their specifics are going to be in that, in those types of fields and industries that they're working in. What is your so let's go on to your company that you've got with Tristan, because I want to show people what we're talking about when stop screen. No, I want to present. I need to get used to this. I need to get used to this technology.
I'm impressed, David, that you can even navigate it right. Like, it's good.
Yeah, I'm usually a lot smoother than this, but there we go. God, I was starting to break out in a sweat then. So you've got Tristan, you've got yourself, you've got New View Safety. Let's have a look at some of the services, because we didn't get a chance to look at too much of this when I was talking to Tristan. And I know this is, it's an interesting part to talk about, because people might think of New View Safety or not have even heard of the term New View Safety and not be familiar with what that actually entails. And I want to make sure that we communicate that properly. What New View, especially around the world. I mean, it's fairly ubiquitous here in Australia. But some of the countries around the world, they may not be familiar with that term. So why don't we try and socialize what we mean when we're talking about New View Safety, first of all, and then we can have a look at some of the services that entails.
Yeah, sure. So for us, as we've listed there, we didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves into saying we're just doing HOP, human and organizational performance, or we're just doing safety differently. We wanted to really convey to the world and our clients that, look, we do take a contemporary and innovative approach with what's been emerging from the safety science literature with HRO, HOP, safety differently, and so on, over the last, say, 2 decades. I think it's been maybe a bit more, which is really that more humanistic, human-centered way of approaching safety. So we wanted to say to clients, look, there is this new way to approach it. However, you very much want to take this integrated approach, because whilst you and I, David, and so many of us, we love it, I was very privileged in the organizations I was in to be able to go, we're going to go all for it, right? And not all organizations can do that. So they might have a board that's very reticent. They might have a board that's very traditional in its thinking, or CEO or executive, where they're saying, look, Kym, we want to be contemporary and innovative. We don't know how, but also we're really concerned because we don't want to end up in a court of law, and we don't want to throw these things out. We still need to be compliant. And you know what? They're correct. They've got tensions that they need to manage. And these tensions are different inside every single organization.
Yes.
So why I believe our sweet spot, our offering is that we assist organizations in navigating those tensions. So ensuring that they're still compliant, which they need to be, but they don't overbake that and end up with a paper safe, overly bureaucratic organization, but they can allow their people to have that freedom in a framework to have some autonomy and be adaptable and do what they're good at doing. So
freedom
that's very
framework.
Yeah. And I know you're similar as well, David. You're not this sort of black and white zealot of we're just doing this. Yeah.
No,
and so
no,
definitely. We've been doing, which has been great for many clients, is they often contact us in relation to maturing their safety leadership. We don't want to come in with a set product and say, okay, here it is. We often come in, first of all, and we do a lot of discovery with them, where we'll do some online focus groups. We'll do perhaps some sort of safety climate surveys, just to find out where their organization's at, what their nuanced challenges are. And then we will build for them a bespoke safety leadership program. Yes, it will have some generic elements, say from HOP, but it's very much bespoke for their organization. So they're getting what their organization at that point in time requires to evolve their safety approach and their journey.
And of course, and this goes without saying as well, I'm just going to say for people out there who might listen to this for the first time, all of what is proposed is based on empirical science, on research, on facts. It's not just the next trend. It's not just something that sounds good. Everything you do is based on research, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, and David, you know what? That was one of the big realizations I had when I was working early on in my career. Some of the facts that we were espousing actually weren't based on the solid research. So I used to go around saying, this is what the program lent to, 95% of incidents are caused by human error. And then years later, when I was going back to just do my due diligence and research, I was like, wow, that's actually not correct. But Dave, here's the thing, not one leader challenged me on that. And that was pretty scary. No one put up their hand and said, Kym, is that actually correct? I mean, yeah, you could always trace it back, inherently, I guess, to human error in some way, shape or form if you want to make that fit. But I was a bit sort of horrifying when I realized that. So one thing I always say in our programs is, today we're going to be curious, but I want you to challenge everything. Ask for the evidence. Don't take my word for it. Ask for the evidence. Push me, debate this, pull it apart. Because I don't think we do that enough in safety, or encourage leaders to do that enough in safety.
No, there seems to be more of, that person works in safety, or that brought that expert in. Everything they say has to be done carte blanche. That's the way it is. And that's it's a very control and command type style profession. Historically, it has been, hasn't it? It's been very much, do as I say, it's the way to go. And don't question it, because it's safety. And even now, even in some organizations that I've been involved with in the past 5-10 years, it's a case of, I'll ask, why did you do that? Oh, safety said we had to do it. And there's no curiosity there to actually question whether it's applicable, whether it's serving the purpose that it was intended to do, and if it's causing any friction or any kind of, any problems within the organization. It's done because they were told safety says we have to do this. And there's a good story though. I can't remember who it was I was talking to the other day, and they said that's right, it's Andrew Barrett, and he said, have you heard of the lamb in the oven story? And I said, no, I haven't, because we're talking about this very thing. And I said, what is it? And he said, so you've got this a mother, she's cooking a Sunday roast, and before she puts the lamb in the oven, she cuts both the legs off at the knees, and she puts the lamb in the oven. And the daughter says to her mother, why do you do that? And she says, I don't know, it's just what we do. And she goes, it's not really good enough. Can we find out why? So they went to the mother's mother, the child's grandmother and said, when you were cooking the Sunday roast, the lamb Sunday roast, why did you cut the legs off? And she says, I don't know. It's just what we do. I'm like, that's not really good enough either. So they went, fortunately, the great grandmother was still alive, and they went and asked her, so why did you used to cut the legs off the lamb? She said, well, my oven was small and I couldn't fit the whole lamb in. So I used to cut the legs off. And I thought that was a really good story,
That's
a really
great.
good
That's
analogous
so
story to see how things are passed down and not questioned. And not questioned. It's so true, isn't it? And there's other cases as well of just piling more and more in without questioning its validity, but not taking anything out as you do that. So as you alluded to earlier on, you end up with this hugely overly bureaucratic system, which its intent is one thing, and I'm assuming the intent was positive. Let's put this in because it's going to improve safety. This is going to improve safety. But we've reached a point in a lot of organizations, and you can probably attest to this, whereby there's so much stuff that people are required to do over and above what's possibly regulated, that it's actually counterproductive for safety, and not just safety, but also for efficiency, effectiveness. What's the word I'm looking for? Creativity. It stifles so much within the organization, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand, David. And just as you're talking, I'm thinking it's probably why, and you've probably had this numerous times before, when you introduce HOP, safety differently, all that, to an operational leader, they often say, this is so great. This is what I've been thinking for years, or I've been wanting to do this for years. And it's probably because they've been sort of had to do it that way because the safety team maybe has imposed it. But now all of a sudden they're getting a different, it's coming to them a different way. And they're like, yes, thank goodness, finally, because this is what I've been thinking all the time.
Yeah, maybe they're realizing that, that command and control structure from 30, 40, 50 years ago in these dynamic, complex work environments that they're managing these days, it's not working. It's not having the desired effect that, that it may have had in the past. And they need to do it a different way. But a little bit like you, as soon as I found out about these types of new safety methodologies and contemporary approaches, it just clicked, and it was like, oh, that's right. It's the human at the center. It's the human where we have to start. And I was just having a conversation with a gentleman called Ray Gonzalez over in America, and he's written a book. I'm going to forget the name of the book because I'm terrible with names. Essentially, it's about how safety coaching can improve effectiveness of error reduction at the front line. And he proposed something to me, which I want to mention to you because it was a fascinating change of perspective for me. He said he believes that frontline safety coaching is the most important critical risk control.
Wow, that's huge. Has his book been published yet, David?
It has, and I can find it. And I'll
have to add that to my reading list. I'd really like to sink my teeth into that one. So safety coaching, we do have a module on safety coaching in our Safety Innovation Masterclass, our 10-week masterclass. And I agree, it's such a critical part of what a safety professional does, but perhaps sometimes overlooked. We're not always taught how to be a good coach, right? Which, when I speak to you and I hear about what you're doing, I get quite excited. I'm like, how can we build on this and amplify it and equip that next generation of safety professionals to become really good, strong coaches? Okay, There we go. Thank you. I'll add that. I'll purchase that one. Fantastic.
And I thought, and he goes into there exactly what you're talking about there, which is the essentially how to have those conversations. How to have, and it's not just a random conversation; it's a structured conversation with a desired ending. But people don't inherently know how to have these conversations, especially when that control, command, that didactic communication comes so naturally to us, which is a one-way it's not even a conversation, it's one-way information purging. You didn't do this, you should have done that, I saw you do that, why didn't you do this, blah blah blah, as opposed to talk to me about what you saw when you were doing that. What was going through your mind? What was going through your world? What conflicts were you dealing with? What tools weren't working properly? All those kind of conversations. that don't come naturally. So I think that's a beautiful space that I found when I was introduced to coaching 5 years ago, which was, okay, this whole humanistic side of safety is wonderful. It's great because now we're putting the person back where they truly belong, and this coaching aspect is the tools to enable that, in my mind. How do we have those structured conversations? How do we get people to use their creativity more, break down those biases, change people's perspectives potentially, but at least, if not changing them, giving them the tools to go through the self-reflection and go, these perspectives I bring are affecting the organization in this way or in that way. And especially with biases. I mean, there's a whole list of biases now which we could talk about, hindsight bias, especially hindsight bias, that affect how safety is enacted within an organization. Are those types of things covered within your coaching piece, your training piece as well, your 10-week course?
Yeah, so because Tristan and I both have that psychological background, and also Jonathan Lincoln, who was the original owner of the Zero Incident Process, the program that Centres had, so I've come from a long line of working with people with psych backgrounds. We often include that psychological aspect to all our trainings. So we talk about hindsight bias, confirmation bias, attribution bias, how that impacts a leader, say, with response matters, when it comes to investigating an incident, when it comes to responding to an event, hearing some bad news. But then more importantly, how do you actually control for that bias? And I'm always blown away. Every single program I do, people come away saying, wow, that was great information. Why wasn't I taught this sooner? People find it really enlightening because, as you say, it gives them an opportunity to self-reflect. But just going back to a point that you made before, David, about the safety professional as the coach, it also gives them an opportunity to walk in the shoes of an operational leader.
Exactly.
Because until you do that, you've got no idea of the work is done for them and just the challenges that they deal with day in, day out. And it's, always interesting with them to learn about the workarounds, what they have to deal with, what they have to navigate on a day-to-day basis. So until we really get into the shoes of an operational leader as a safety professional, a head of health and safety, we have to bridge that gap with them. Otherwise, we're just imposing on them as to what we think is going to work best.
Definitely. And it's not, and it's such a rare viewpoint as well, because my first foray into safety, I went straight from the front line to heading up a safety department. And I was always advocating for the front line because that's where I've come from. That's where my work colleagues were. That's where my interests were. And I was very passionate about that. And hand on heart, it didn't take long for me to become disassociated with them. 6-12 months. And it wasn't a deliberate decision. I was just in conflict between where I was being pulled. Obviously the regulators, the senior leaders on one side need X, Y, and Z. And that overtook, and I'm kind of looking back in hindsight now and going, it overtook way too much. I should have been a lot more focused on the front line where it was. And even me, coming from that very same front line, only being out of it for 6-12 months, I found myself becoming very disassociated with it, and becoming more interested in the legal aspect and more interested in the compliance aspect and less interested in the conversation side. And it was only thankfully for an ex-work colleague of mine pulled me aside after I'd rolled out this great brand new safety management system, which I was so proud of, and it was spindly spangly and so brand new. And he pulled me aside, and he's Dutch, so he's very forward and to the point, and he doesn't really care what you think about him, to be honest with you. And he said, great. He said, you just made our life more complicated and not improved safety one bit. And I just went, my world just went boom.
Really?
And I had to reflect on that for a few days and think, he's absolutely right. Nothing that they do at the front line has changed. I've not changed it, apart from the fact that I now have more forms to fill in. I've not improved a single thing.
And good on you for having that level of vulnerability to actually admit that, David, because, when we're working in these safety professional roles, heads of health and safety, they're demanding roles, like they're full on, and you get your own level of bureaucracy that you can just be chained behind your desk on your, on your email and forget that actually our core role is to get out there and make operational safety better, make the job safer, with people, not doing it to people, but
Yeah.
empowering people to do that, right? And so I think I'm the same as you. I think I've battled that when I've been in those roles, to go, how much time am I spending out in the field? How much time is my team spending out in the field?
Yeah.
Am I measuring this difference that I'm actually making here? Or, because you still have to fulfill all these other obligations you have to other stakeholders, right? And I was fortunate enough, like when I was at Urban Utilities, to work with the CEO who insisted once a month, one of us from the safety team would take her out to do a site tour once a month.
Wow.
The whole day as a CEO. Now that's impressive, because I don't anyone who's listening that's been at that CEO level, that is a tough thing to do. So when I went into the regulator role, which was effectively the CEO of that agency, I made the effort to go out into the field, and people were saying, Kym, what are you doing? Like, you got, because the back end work was pretty full on. What are you doing going out? I'm like, no, we have to go out as leaders. Otherwise, we just the gap is too big between that work is imagined and work is done. Yeah, 100%. So one of the things we're doing, David,
stay connected, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. One of the things we're doing with a client right now, which is really exciting, is we're working very closely with this quite a large cohort of what we call hot champions. So as part of their safety transformation change, they've wrapped the change management process around it, which I really advocate for strongly. And part of that is that guiding coalition, the early adopters, the ones who are out there operationally who can embed this. So it's not the safety team, these are operational people and operational leaders. So just this week, actually, we're kicking off their hot champion training. So these are people who have volunteered themselves to say, look, I'm passionate about this. This is what I've been thinking for a long time, like we were just talking about.
It makes sense to me. It makes sense
to me. I want to be a part of this. So we're equipping them with the coaching skills, the skills for micro experiments, so that they can go out into this organization, which is quite dispersed into 14 different sites. So they can go out and really start to affect change and make an operational difference for safety. So yeah, really exciting to see where that organization gets, because it's always a hard thing to establish that sort of champion group as part of your change transformation. It can die a quick and sudden death. But this organization's done, what they're doing is impressive. They've got the right scaffolding around getting that hot champions going. So yeah, maybe we'll link in at some point and I can update you as to how they're going with that.
Definitely, that would be awesome. And it is so important, like you said, when you are trying to enact that large type organizational change, having those early adopters, having those people who just understand it and get it. And I remember your YouTube video when you're talking about urban utilities as well, and you interviewed quite a few people there as well who were champions, who just got it and were able to continue the message when you weren't personally around, and be able to keep that momentum going in places where at the front line or at different levels of the management structure as well.
Yeah, we called that group the Vanguard. So that was our little name for them, the Vanguard, the ones that go forward, first. They're at the front line, if you like, of war, but not that this was a war, because it certainly wasn't. But yeah, that Vanguard group was so great, David. So we had our contractors, we had senior leaders, we had HSRs, health safety reps, which are legislated in Australia, obviously. And yeah, the micro experiments they came up with was impressive. I tried to find the list the other day, but we had one of our scientists who worked in one of the labs say, Kym, got all these safety posters. Do they actually make a difference? So his whole micro experiment was around researching whether these posters actually made a difference. We had people decluttering the Take 5 risk assessment, which had become very much a surface compliance tick and flick type activity. So we had about 30 micro experiments across the organization, not led by the
what I love about that is that they weren't told what to micro experiment. They micro experiment whatever was their particular gripe, was their particular problem, their particular sticking point. And you get enough people doing that and you solve a whole heap of problems, and people actually want to solve those problems because it's their particular problem. It's fabulous. You get everyone to work with you. Hey, look, I know
I got Drew Ray in to help us. He came in to talk about one of the Vanguard sort of training sessions. He came in and talked about how to set up a micro experiment, because it can seem a little bit daunting. Like, you've got this thing called a control group. What is that? What do I do with them? How do I measure this? But we just sort of demystified it and showed people that actually, no, it's not a big deal. This is how you do it. It's quite simple. Just requires a little bit of thought and structure. And then you go away and you run your micro experiment, report back on it. So yeah, that was exciting. Yeah, really good. So yeah, I encourage any organization out there who are in that position to be able to start to micro experiment, or maybe their organization's reticent about, say, learning teams or anything at all. Just give it a go in one particular area. Pick a department that's keen and eager, and you've got some champions in there, and go and design your own micro experiment. Report back to your senior leaders on the return on investment, the impact that it's had. Yeah.
No, and just very quickly, shout out to Drew Ray as well. I know you worked with him there. He was also one of my lecturers. An amazing, highly efficient, effective, intelligent, kind person. Really nice. I've got a lot of time for Drew. Look, I'm aware.
Sorry, David, just before we wrap up, I did also do my master's thesis on the limitations of safety auditing with Drew Ray, which was fascinating. Happy to send that to anyone. But rather than reading my thesis, you could read Ben Hutchinson's published research, which he has gone and obviously taken to a whole new level for his doctorate, PhD with Sidney Dekker and Drew Ray. So it's really interesting to see the research emerging in that space, because auditing is something we heavily invest in. ISO auditing, it's not something we want to remove either, right? Because it has its place. So how can we approach auditing with a slightly different lens, a more contemporary lens? So Ben Hutchinson's done some great work there with Drew Ray. I don't know if you've interviewed him yet, David, but
Ben or Drew?
Hutchinson? Either.
Ben Hutchinson. I was trying to get Ben and Tristan actually to do a joint piece on here, because I know that they're both heavily research focused, and I put them together and said, look, come up with an idea that you want to talk about to everybody. But I think with timescales and people being busy and Tristan being there and Ben being here, but that's something that I would really love, because I didn't think that Tristan wanted to talk about some particular type of research, and I don't think I would do him justice as an interviewer, because that's not really my area of interest. And I want to be open and honest and say, look, you would be talking about stuff which really wouldn't particularly interest me, or wouldn't particularly, it's not the way my brain works. So why don't I find somebody, and in this case it was Ben, who's also very much research focused, and we can get you two together and you can have a discussion on the tube together, which I suppose was just me kind of recognizing my weaknesses. Here I am showing where I'm not. I'm aware of time. So what I'd like to quickly do, and you mentioned micro experiments, and you mentioned people starting small, but you also mentioned earlier on that your services are set up in order for people to be able to start small, start with certain small functions and small ideas, and be able to build, as opposed to throwing the baby out of the bathwater. Actually start looking at some small things. So why don't we have, if people are hearing this wherever they are in the world and they're going, that sounds like something that they would like to start looking at, especially from your organization, what would be some of the services that you would suggest they go and have a look at, or some of the services that you provide that they're going to have a look at?
Sure. I mean, they could start with the self-paced masterclass. So that's that was born out of me getting just inundated from around the world on the back of the documentary with Sidney Dekker. Kym, how do I do this? So Tristan and I really had that passion to say, look, we just want to give people the how. How do you do a learning team? How do you report on a learning team? How do you do a work insight? How do you do coaching? How do you run a micro experiment? Where do I start? And then the whole idea of that was to equip people so they could write their own strategic initiatives and their own strategies. So there's a self-paced version. There's also a 10-week version. There's one kicking off tomorrow, actually, which is the 8th of May, depending on when you publish this episode, David. But we have them running all the time. So people could do that, or they could just reach out to us via LinkedIn. So, I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. We often post articles, or via our LinkedIn page, myself and Tristan. They can always contact us for an obligation-free chat to say, hey, I want to do this. We're happy to share information as much as we can for no obligation, or hey, we want to actually talk to you. So thank you for showing that, David. They can get in contact with us via the website or LinkedIn.
No worries at all. I'll put a link to your website and link to your LinkedIn profile, if that's all right, in the description below as well, so people have direct access to be able to just get in contact with you there as well. If you're happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, thank you for all you're doing through this YouTube channel. It's been great. I've watched a lot of your episodes with different people that I know quite well. It's always great to hear what people are up to. So thank you for all you
people
do.
Amazing. People are amazing. They just want to share their value in their stories. And that's I was talking very early on, and I'll keep this brief because I know you've got an engagement coming up. I was talking to Josh Bryan, very early on. It's when I was kind of new to this, and I was still a little bit unsure as to what I was doing, and he said, David, just ask people what value they want to share, and what they can do to help other people. And I'm like, you know what, that's exactly what it's all about. It really is what it's all about. It's just about having this community where we don't need to tell people what to do. We just share our stories, and people take from it what they will. So anyway, it's enough of my rambling. Thank you so much, Kym. It's been an absolute blast having you on. And you know, there's so many places we could have gone with this. We could have spent another 4 or 5 hours chatting, but I really appreciate the time that you do, that you have, you know, put aside to have this chat. Thank you so much for that. If you could hang around just very, very briefly while I say goodbye to everybody, just so I can say goodbye to you personally. Some people decide to disappear, but if you could just hang around, that'd be great.
No, thanks, David. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. Okay, everybody, that was Kym Bancroft from here in Australia. An amazing pool of knowledge, wealth, wealth of resources, experience. Her and Tristan working together at New View Safety. They bring, as Kym mentioned and Tristan mentioned, that Pracademic aspect to it. You know, obviously Tristan being the scientist and Kym having the vast amount of multi-organizational level experience, culture change, safety initiatives. It's the dream team, I suppose you can call it. So anyway, thank you again for tuning in and for watching, and thank you again for everyone for subscribing and supporting the channel. Very much appreciated. Thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next video. Take care, everyone.